Welcome everybody to the Big Book Roundtable and the RICO 12 family of recovery resources. We gather around this roundtable, David, Nikki, and I, and invite people to join with us from all backgrounds, faiths, and places dealing with addictions of all varieties. We're grateful to be this resource and to work together to really have our eyes opened, our minds opened, and hopefully invite you into those same places of an open mind and open heart, into honesty, open mindedness, and willingness. RICO 12 has several other resources that this family of recovery resources has, including our flagship RICO 12 speaker meeting podcast. Weekly, we record on Fridays and release on Fridays. We've got the Big Book Roundtable that comes out every Thursday, and the Noodle It Out with Nikki podcast that comes out every Tuesday. In the Big Book Roundtable, we take a deep dive into the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and we go line by line, paragraph by paragraph, going in and just seeing, what is there and what different angles and perspectives we can pull from it. So today, as we get reading here, well, first let me get our panelists introduced. Nikki, why don't you take a second, say hi, introduce yourself before we get into our readings.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nikki M., and I'm here as a grateful member and a spearhead of God's ever-advancing creation, broadcasting live from Toronto, Canada on a beautiful fall day. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. All right, David, introduce yourself, please.
Hey, everybody. My name is David G. I am a recovered alcoholic, addict of many sorts, calling from Oklahoma today in the USA. So really, really grateful to be here with Justin and Nikki, and thank you both for your service.
Thank you, David. And I am coming to you live from Spokane, Washington, where I'm looking out the window at a beautiful fire red maple tree. I love the colors this time of year. It's beautiful. All right. So today we're going to continue where we left off. Last episode, we dove deep into pages 60 and a little bit in 60 and 61, and we went really deep there. And today we're going to continue on this. These pages in how it works are so deep. There's so much in here. So we're going to read today from the bottom of page 61. Our actor is self-centered, and we will go through the bottom of page 62, which we pass to freedom. So we're covering just a little over one page today. And I look forward to getting into this and having my eyes and mind opened even more. Okay, here we go. Our actor is self-centered, egocentric, as people call it nowadays. He is like the retired businessman who lolls in the Florida sunshine in the winter, complaining of the sad state of the nation, the minister who sighs over the sins of the 20th century, politicians and reformers who are sure all would be utopia if the rest of the world would only behave, the outlaw safecracker who thinks society has wronged him, and the alcoholic who has lost all and is locked up. Whatever our protestations, are not most of us concerned with ourselves, our resentments, or our self-pity? Selfishness, self-centeredness, that, we think, is the root of our troubles. Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, and driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity, we step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. Sometimes they hurt us, seemingly without provocation, but we invariably find that at some time in the past we have made decisions based on self, which later placed us in a position to be hurt. So our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making. They arise out of ourselves, and the alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run riot, though he usually doesn't think so. Above everything, we alcoholics must be rid of this selfishness. We must, or it kills us. God makes that possible, and there often seems no way of entirely getting rid of self without His aid. Many of us had moral and philosophical convictions galore, but we could not live up to them, even though we would have liked to. Neither could we reduce our self-centeredness much by wishing or trying on our own power. We had to have God's help. This is the how and why of it. First of all, we had to quit playing God. It didn't work. Next, we decided that hereafter in this drama of life, God was going to be our director. He is the principal. We are his agents. He is the Father, and we are his children. Most good ideas are simple, and this concept was the keystone of the new and triumphant arch through which we passed to freedom. So much more in there. Man, we are going deep in these readings. So let's jump in here. Nikki, why don't you lead us off today and just kind of go through that reading and talk to us about some of the things that jump out at you.
Wow. I'm going to skim through this. Sometimes I sit in meetings and they read pages and I'm like, we just need to read one sentence because that's really what this is like. But I know we're just skimming through. So I'll just go through quickly. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. So, our actor, the liar. And if you didn't listen to last episode, please go back and listen to it because David was exploding mine and Justin's brains about this isn't really who we are. This is the programming. So the programming that has been instilled in me, at least, about self, ego, right? That's what it is. I'm self, ego, my actor, my liar, my programming. This is all what we just did in our last episode. The actor who wants to run the show, whether it's the retired person complaining. And that's what I do. I mean, I'm retired. This is how this program works. God will do for you. And I'm 51. I love this line though. Utopia. If the rest of the world would only behave. See, that's me. If only God, if only Justin Trudeau and I get you're going to still have a problem with the new prime minister, Nikki. If only my son would behave. I mean, this is how I live my life. It doesn't work. Why? Because I'm really only concerned with Nikki. I'm only concerned with Nikki. Okay. And I live in my dirty diaper, my self-pity. I love this. I'm going to start from here. Selfishness, self-centeredness. See, that's the root of our trouble. I get a lot of people who call me and Nikki, I know what my problem is. No, can you please open the book? It's on page 62. Self is your problem. You don't know what your problem is. And I don't need to hear you take me hostage on the phone. Self is the problem. Okay. And this is why. This is what drives you. See, I'm driven by 100 forms of fear, comma. I'm driven by 100 forms of self-delusion, comma. I'm driven by 100 forms of self-seeking and 100 forms of self-pity. My sponsor, another one I had before, an Al-Anon, 30 years AA, told me that's 400 forms of madness. How the hell am I going to get out of bed every day if this is what's driving me, this 400 forms of madness? And naturally, I'm going to step on the toes of everybody and they're going to retaliate and it's going to hurt me. Seemingly fake news because it's without provoking them. I haven't provoked anybody. I'm just here being gracious, kind. Don't you see I'm trying to help you? Battle cry of the codependent Al-Anon. Don't you see what I'm doing for you? But here it is. But I find that at some point in the past, Nikki, see, I make decisions based on self, on what I want, that later place me in a position to be destroyed. I made a baby with a stranger, basically, because I thought I needed a husband. Then I just picked some good-looking Portuguese guy. And then I thought I needed a son because I don't want a daughter because I already have one. She's 12. I need a son. And God gave me a son and I threw them both out a year because I needed something else. I make decisions based on self that later place me and people in a position to be destroyed because I threw out baby daddy number 2 and son a year after he was born. So my troubles, I know, I don't only think, I know are my making because it arises out of myself because I'm an extreme example of self. That's all I think about is Nikki. And I love this line, above everything. We alcoholics, addict, must rid self. It doesn't say must rid alcohol. In order to rid self, you must rid alcohol. You must rid your porn. You must rid all those issues. But it says above everything, I have to get rid of self. And God makes that possible. Otherwise, it says, I'm going to die. It says, it's going to kill me, self. Not the problems, self. I am going to kill myself. And only God. And what does that mean to newcomers if you're listening? You don't have a new concept of God. So what do? I loan my new friends concepts. How does that mean? Getting humble will make that possible. Getting polite, having gratitude will make that possible. Getting tolerant, accepting, forgiving, getting active in your life, and getting off your dirty, stinky diaper will make that possible. Okay. And I love this too. This is where I kind of share. Many of us had moral and philosophicals galore. I remember I said I would never be with a man who hit me. And the minute he perforated my eardrum, I begged him to take me back. Like I will never choose a drug over my children. My mom chose men over me her whole life. I said I would never do that. I throw my son out the first chance I get. I can't live up to these things, even though I wanted to. So here it is. I have to have these principles. I have to have your help. I have to have God's help, or I will not make it today. So I have to quit playing God. See, Nikki, I have boundaries. What are your boundaries? You have no boundaries. You quit playing God. People can't talk to me that way, says somebody. They can talk to you any way they want. Quit playing God. Why are you there? See, I have to decide next, quickly, fast, in this drama of life, that these spiritual principles, that this power of love is going to direct everything I do, and I'm going to represent it as its agents. See, I've never had a dad. I met my dad when I was 18 years old. I did not know what he looked like. I'm going to write a book called I Almost Slept with My Dad because I didn't know what he looked like. And me and many women have had that experience, but I have a father. This book tells me that I'm his child. And I love that because good ideas are simple. And this concept, all these concepts, quit playing God. God is the director, that these principles, that this is my father, this energy of love is going to keep me safe and protected. That concept, this new thinking, this new way of life and ideas is how I'm going to walk in through this new triumphant arc to freedom. I have to let God be God. And I have to just be Nikki M, a child of God. Thank you.
Thanks, Nikki, for going through that. David, how about you as we go through that? What are some of the things that jump out at you?
Yeah, there's so much. And thank you so much, Nikki, for your share and your realness. I just love it. You know, real change is not behavior modification, it's spiritual transformation. Change the inside and the outside changes automatically. It's just the way it is. But I'm not aware of a system of thought that defeats me. I feel that I'm it. And as long as I believe that lie, that illusion, I'm always going to stay sick. I'm always going to be the victim. I'm always going to be the one who is hurt in relationships. I'm always going to be the one who loses the job because people doesn't like me. All this bullshit that has absolutely nothing to do with reality. I'm believing a system of thought that is not true. I'm taking actions based on it. And my reality is not very good. So our act. I'm tired of that bastard by now. Way tired. Because now I got eyes on him. I know who he is. I see what he is. How am I going to stop him? He's way more powerful than me, and there's no doubt I'm no match for him. So the book is going to introduce us to a new idea. So it says our actor's self-centered, egocentric, not David, our actor. His name's Self. And he goes through all of these, but when you get to page 62, it says self and self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our trouble. The root is something that's from what all else derives. A root is something that is fed by something else that makes it grow. That's exactly what's happening here. My addict is the self. Look at that one word, driven. Now, if I'm being driven, I'm sure as hell not the guy behind the wheel. Something else is driving me. Only I don't know that. I'm unconsciously aware of that. So don't get me wrong. I've been along for the ride, but I'm not the one behind the wheel. And it took me years to see this. I'm driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion with a small s, self-seeking with a small s, self-pity with a small s. Think of every time that something happens in your life. We get afraid. We start lying to ourselves. That's self-delusion. It's not me, it's them. I start seeking a way to put out the fire, only by creating more fires, to have to put out more fires. And then in the end, I'm left with self-pity. Oh, man, you know, why this has always happened to me all the time. Every time I get into a relationship or get a good job, they don't recognize my abilities. You know, here I am one more time. I'm just acting the part here. We step on the toes of our fellows. They retaliate. Of course they do, because they're suffering from the same thing. Sometimes they hurt us without provocation, but we invariably find that sometime in the past, we have made decisions based on self. There's two words that jump at me here. One is we, the other is self. That's not the same. Now I'm beginning to see the difference between the two, which later put us in a position, circle the word us. Look at we, look at us, look at self. Self put us in that position to be hurt. But only it's like a bully cousin. It's going to get me to rob a damn liquor store with it, and then it's going to back off and let me take the hit and convince me that it was my fault that all this shit ever happened to begin with. I don't even know any better. I'm going to go to jail for the rest of my life over something that's something. it's insane. It really is. So our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making, because they arise out of, and I've crossed out the word I here, self. I don't identify with self anymore. I just don't. The alcoholic is the extreme example of self-will run riot. But here's the problem. I don't think so. I think it's me. I don't think it's self. I think it's you. I think it's them. I think it's the court system. I think it's the job. It's people don't understand me. People in Alcoholics Anonymous don't have a damn clue who I am, or they would respect me and treat me better. And, you know, all of this bullshit. But above everything, I must be rid of self, not David, selfishness. I must, or it kills us. I remember as a newcomer reading this with a sponsor, and I said, you talk about a kind and a loving God through this book. If that's the case, why the hell would he kill us? It says right there, it'd kill us. And that's when it first started opening my eyes to, David, you don't read the book the way the book is written. It says above everything, we alcoholics must be rid of this selfishness. We must, or it kills us, not God. Live in that system of thought for the rest of your life that you always have, and keep taking the actions you have based on the thoughts that are given you, and watch what happens. You'll die emotionally, you'll die mentally, you'll die spiritually, and then eventually we will die physically. We just will. God makes that possible because there's free will. I have guys tell me all the time when I read them through this part of the book, they're like, man, I'm scared. I'm scared now because I see what this thing has done to me and continues to do to me on a daily basis. How in the hell are we ever going to be rid of it? And that next sentence tells us there's no way you can. No way. Without his aid, capital H, there's no other way. So they say, David, how am I aware that when this thing is there? Because I'm consciously, well, one, we're going to have a spiritual awakening through the book. But two, there's another way. And in my portfolio, I have something that's called the 4 characteristics of self. And this is how I know he showed up. 1, I'm going to start feeling like I'm a victim. 2, I'm going to start scorekeeping. You see what he did? Well, this is what I do. I would never do anything like they do. And I'm going to start keeping score. Next is the judge, the jury, the executioner. I've already got you tried. I've already got you convicted. And I'm about to execute your ass mentally and even physically if I get the chance. Anytime those kind of thoughts start showing up inside of me, I know that that's 3 of the 4. The last one is called the noticer. I start noticing what you're doing and what you're not doing and what you ought to be doing. If you'd only do this and you'd only do that. Anytime those behaviors start showing up, I know that self is ever present. I know it is today. It says there often seems no way of entirely getting rid of drugs, booze, alcohol, lust, sex, problems, relationship problems. No, self without his aid. Many of us have all these moral and philosophical convictions, and they're very good after you have the awakening, but before the awakening, they're not worth a shit because they don't help us. We can't live. We can't live up to it. I sure would have liked to, though. Neither could we reduce our self-centeredness. Why? Because self can't overcome self. There's no way it can. There has to be something more powerful than self. And see, step 2 did not say that I come to believe in a power. It says I come to believe that a power can restore my sanity. We're not talking about me pissing in a water fountain downtown while I'm drunk or assaulting a cop, and going to jail. We're not talking about that kind of insanity. We're talking about the beliefs that I have that I can manage life and manage my life and your life, and I don't need any God telling me what to do. And then come to find out I've been the victim of a God of reason with a capital R the entire time. Now, a lot of people seem to think that the third step starts on page 63 of the book, but I disagree with that. I believe it starts right here. This is the how and the why of it. First of all, we had to quit playing God. It didn't work. It's not that I don't like playing it. It's just it don't work anymore. But these next 3 words, next we decided, that sounds like a decision. And that's the third step decision right there. Now, the prayer will confirm and affirm this decision, but the third step decision is found right here. Next, we decided that hereafter in this drama of life, God's going to be the director. Well, if he has not been the director of my thoughts, my emotions, my concepts, and my beliefs up to this point, who the hell has? I've seen in the last 2 pages exactly who has, and it's called self. And I'm going to fire his ass. We're going to have a new employer. So we're about to get rid of him. It's going to give me some concepts to go by. One's a director, one's a principal, one's an agent, one's a father. Pick any one you want. Most good ideas, key word. We've been looking at ideas all the way through this book. Most good ideas are simple. That's why I never had too many of them. Now it's going to talk about concepts. We've talked about that all the way through the book. This is the keystone of the new and triumphant arch through which we pass to freedom. So you think of an arch, and as you build it, the keystone sets right in the middle of the arch. And if you try to hold that stone in place, put cement around it, do it perfect, you cannot do that without the help of another person. And that's exactly what's about to happen in this third step. I'm going to need to do this with another person because God's in me, God's in you. I keep you away, I keep God away. I let you in, I let God in. So it just goes on and on and on. There's so much here. But if there's any one thing that I could end this with, don't believe that this is you, because things are about to change. If you'll go through that the rest of this process from here moving forward, you won't think the same, you won't act the same, you won't believe the same. Things that how could those things matter to us anymore? It just doesn't matter. Wow, this is very powerful, very, very powerful stuff. So I'm super grateful to be here, share my experience, strength, and hope. And if your sponsor tells you something different than what I've shared here today, go with what your sponsor tells you. He's your sponsor, not me. So this is my experience. I'm glad to be here.
Thanks, David. Appreciate your insights and your share there. I've got a couple of questions here. Nikki, I've heard you talk about this a lot, driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity, breaking that down into 400 forms. But what does that do to you when you are in those places in selfishness, self-centeredness, and you've got those fears, self-delusion, self-pity just screaming at you and beating on you? What does that do to you, and how do you get out of that?
Oh, that's a great question. And I can use some recent experiences, I'm the experience, strength, and hope girl around this table usually because I've got a shit ton of them. But recently when I was in Luxembourg, okay, so here it is. What does that look like when I'm driven? And this is why, again, around this round table, we say stay. We don't say keep coming back. There's nowhere for you to go. So I went there. And what do I do when I'm there? I don't work a solid program. That's the bottom line truth. I don't sponsor. I'm a full-time sponsor. Like God put me into retirement. It says on page 19, a few of us are fortunate enough to make a, full-time. That's what I do other than my 12-hour a week grocery money job at one of my ex-sponsees comedy club, if you want to call that work. It's grocery money. We're in 2024, everybody. So what does it look like? How do I get out of it? Well, number one, if I don't work this program, like my life depends on it, because I only get a daily reprieve contingent on this spiritual fitness of mine by, again, as David said, I have to decide every day in this drama of life that I am going to let God be my director, be the father, and I need you, as David said, to do all this. So when I'm in blackout like that, because that's what happened. It didn't happen immediately. I was good for 3 weeks. You can be good for a moment, but now I have drifted so far out. I'm not at a meeting for 3 weeks. Not that I need meetings. I'm not talking to any of you guys. We're not even meeting at the round table. You and I aren't doing our weekly podcast. The only thing I'm doing is noodle with Nikki on Monday mornings. That's it. I'm not waking up and doing even upon awakening. I'm just not living this lifestyle. And then what happens? I got into 100 forms of fear, drive me to the airport. Self-delusion. I'm out of my mind. I'm crazy. I'm dying. Self-seeking. You're not giving me what I want. Self-pity. No one loves me. That took 2 seconds to get there. And $1,300 later, I'm on an airplane back to Toronto in 8 hours. You understand? Like I just blacked out. Now, what's happened since when I got off the plane and got home? Are we still talking? Yes. But what does it look like now? I have 3 sponsees going. You'll see the bandage on my finger because I cut it on Saturday serving the homeless while making turkeys. It's Thanksgiving in Canada. I cut the end of my finger off. So I have just thrown myself into service. And guess what? There is no fear. There is no self-delusion. I'm a child of God, self-seeking. I'm living this lifestyle again. I hope that answers the question because I cannot walk away from this lifestyle. It doesn't work for me, for Nikki. And I can't go too far away. So next time I go back to Luxembourg or when anything like that happens again, this is an opportunity to cheerfully capitalize and learn from these things. It says if I learn from these, now I know what not to do next time I'm away from my little routine, safe in my cocoon in Toronto. It's real simple. You just got to follow the instructions every day, which is every day.
Thank you so much, Nikki, for sharing that experience, strength, and hope. It's very enlightening to hear that. All right, David, you talked about, you hit there on the moral and philosophical convictions galore. Many of us had those, but they didn't work. Now, you also mentioned that now, when I'm free of the bondage of self and living in this having had this spiritual experience and spiritual lifestyle, those things can be beneficial. Talk to us about the transition from those moral and philosophical convictions being something that didn't work to being something that helps in the process.
Yeah, absolutely, Justin. And thank you so much for your service here today. Nikki, thank you so much. I'm just looking forward. We have a lot of work to do together, and I'm really, really looking forward to this. I want to go back to page 45 to answer the first part of that question. And we agnostics, I keep coming back to that because that is what is going to heal this damn thing within me. We found that such codes and philosophies did not save it. Well, let's go to the bottom of 44. If a mere code of morals or better philosophy of life were sufficient to overcome alcoholism, many of us would have recovered long ago, but we found that these codes and these philosophies did not save us. No matter how much we tried, we could wish to be moral, wish to be philosophical comfort, and we could do these things with all of our might, but the needed power is not there. There's so many things that I tried to do to overcome lust addiction because I was sober in AA. I hadn't had a drink in 25 years. So there were so many things that I tried to do. I went through the process of A Course in Miracles. I'm Native American, so I did a lot of Indian sweat lodges. I listened to a lot of philosophers, and I'd done all that stuff to try to bring me comfort. And, temporarily it would, but it was always fleeting and soon lost, as the book says. It would always go away. I would even rework the 12 steps exactly the way that I'd been taught to work them by some very, very great men in the program who had a lot of success, and I'd had success, as far as drinking. But lust seemed to be another beast. And I just could not, no matter what I did, recover from it. And that was the baffling feature. So it wasn't until I discovered what the problem truly was. It wasn't lust. See, I kept trying to overcome lust. And what I've come to learn about sex is the vehicle. Lust is the fuel. If you cut off the fuel supply, the vehicle doesn't run. But first, I need to know what the hell supplies the fuel to the vehicle. And so once I was able to see that and have this awakening from self and begin to turn and live a different life, and it wasn't easy. I had a lot of hell. I had a lot of ups and downs with that stuff. And then I was able to go back and pursue the Bible. And what a deep meaning that has brought about. The Course in Miracles, I could see that in a way that I'd never seen it before. My Native American practices today are more enriched, more than they ever have been, because I'm not using them to try to overcome something that only God can. I was using them kind of as an higher power. I was using those as, those are only road signs to the power. They are not the power. And so to be able to use those things today, but to know that they're not the source, that they are a spirit within themselves, but they are not the spirit, if that makes any sense. And so I just know that there's a part in our book on page 80, 87. And it says, be quick to see where religious people are right. But what it does not say is be quick to see that they are right. And I had that so backwards. I thought that if they said it, it must be right. Well, and it may be right for them, but it just wasn't right for me. And so I was able to look at all of this stuff combined with the questions that you asked, and I take what works for me and I leave the rest. I'm never going to get away from the work that's outlined in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, but I've stepped beyond that work now into other areas, other books, other realms. And man, today it works beautifully because I know I'm not trying to use it to overcome an addiction that only God can. And today I know that I'm not the problem, self is, and that if I will take these necessary steps, I'll have an awakening. The book says the problem no longer exists. Well, I always read that as well. Drinking no longer exists. Lust no longer. No. What drove me to that? That's what we're looking at. So I'm not sure if that answers the question, but that's my experience around it for sure. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Well, it takes me to an answer and takes me to my takeaway from this. And I'll start us off with takeaways today. Earlier, it was mentioned that real change is not behavioral modification. It is inspirational or spiritual transformation. Yesterday, I was listening to another podcast, and something was said that really hit me in the gut that I think accentuates what this is. I see God bringing this together. He said something to the effect of, if I'm praying just to pray, and not just to pray, but I'm praying because that's what works, what I think works, and I'm praying to the walls and ceilings and everything else, I am forgetting the purpose of prayer is to connect with that power that is greater than myself. I'm not praying to check it off. It's not a behavioral modification prayer. If I'm doing it to behaviorally modify myself, it's not going to work. But if I'm doing it to feast on that spiritual transformation, then I connect with the power, and the power provides the solution. And that's my takeaway today. Nikki, what about you? What's your takeaway today?
Wow, so many. I was just sitting here listening to both of you, and it's like my real takeaway is that there's so much power here. I know nothing. I need to stay. Basically, that's what my brains are exploding, going, you know what, Nikki, you've been here 12 years and you are just now opening your eyes. Like, I'm just coming awake. It's like the Matrix. I'm literally coming out of the Matrix. If anyone's seen that movie and you haven't, go watch it. I am taking that pill and waking up. And I'm realizing as you were just speaking, because I have on my page written, I love this life. Behavior modification is a log. Meaning it's only going to work for a minute, and then it's going to get slippery, and there's going to be the Niagara Falls, and I'm going to fall off of it. It's only going to give me temporary solution. I need a permanent solution. So I have to stay. I have to be at this table, and I have so much to learn. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. David, how about you? What's a takeaway for you?
Yeah, for sure. Nikki, I love you so much. 12 years, try 25. Talk about pissed off and baffled. That was me. Oh my God. I know all this stuff. Yeah. How's that working for you? So what I know. There's a story about a Chinese farmer, and we don't have time to tell that today. It's based on a Buddhist teaching. I'd like to share that at some point with you guys, but not today. So, Justin, I love what you said about your takeaway, and it's mine as well. Where am I at in my prayer life today? Jesus the Christ said it this way when he was talking about the Pharisees. He said, it sounds like a resounding gong, that they pray and do all this eloquent shit in front of other people. But when they get alone with God, they can't even hardly have words to say. And I'm thinking, them damn Pharisees, ha, 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 ha. Shit, that's talking to me. That's talking to me about, not me, self. There's something inside of me that wants me disconnected from this power so much because it wants all of me. That's why it's called self. And I could pray so beautifully in front of people, so beautifully. And then I could get alone on my knees, and I was so confused, so disconnected, didn't even know what to say. So the words that he was saying about them to them is really about me to self, because that's what disconnects me. Now, I could go on a rant and talk about pornography and all that stuff all day long and get by myself and do that beautifully. No problem. So, yeah. Behavior modification. I have tried that so many times through the things that I said a while ago, through different practices, through different books, through different readings. But until I have an awakening from self, I don't stand a chance here. My book tells me that I'll die a very miserable death, that I will go on to the bitter end. And I see people with many years of sobriety in different fellowships that are as miserable as they've ever been. I was one of them. 25 years, I was dying on the vines in the room. Now, you wouldn't know it by looking at me, because outwardly I put on a show that convinced everybody. But inwardly, I'm dying. And I don't have enough nerve to stand up and tell the truth. Fear has got me. Remember, that's driven. That's what's driving self in us. And I'm just dying. So I guess if anything I take away from this podcast and all that we've read and all that we've said is just, there's one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now, not after a while. So anyway, I'm really glad to be here. Thanks so much.
Thank you, David. Man, I got chills. I got chills running up and down my spine from the last couple of episodes that we've recovered. God is in this work. Everybody keep coming back. Stay, and get into this. Find that transformation, that spiritual transformation. Stop working the behavioral modifications. Find the spiritual transformation, because you're worth it.